Good Wednesday morning, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk here on the I Love CVille Network. We are live in Charlottesville, across Albemarle County, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented by Scott Morris of Ross Mortgage.
Good morning.
Scott Morris of Ross Mortgage. Judah Wickhauer, let's
huh?
go to the three shot and let's welcome Scott to the program, who every day is getting even more refined and polished in this setting.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliments are really coming in this Wednesday. That's amazing. Guys.
You get the feedback from viewers.
Yeah. I've got
in real time.
Stop rocking in your chair.
Yeah, stop rocking in your chair. Good morning, Keith Smith. How are you?
Good morning. I never got that feedback.
Well, the feedback to you is open your body to the
Yeah.
If I was as calm and collected, if I was as cool as Keith Smith is, just ice water running through my veins.
What did Stuart Scott used to say? Cooler is the other side of the pillow?
Cooler than the other side of the pillow.
Wow.
Remember
Right.
Stuart Scott?
Yeah.
Rest in power, Stuart Scott. So, gentlemen, it's a Wednesday morning, the first Wednesday of February. A bit of stabilization with the equities markets after a choppy January. Johnny Ornalis and Bill McKenzie, hello. Where would we like to begin today? Keith, I'll start with you on that topic.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to pick up a little bit on something we were doing yesterday when we had Tony O'Brien and Chris Fairchild, and we were talking all things Fulvana County. And one of the things that popped up, and I just wanted to kind of run it past you, we talk about interest rates and where it's going. I just looked at the monitor over there, and the 30-year is, according to CNBC, is 3.68%. Jumbo's at 3.34, which struck me as a little odd, a little lower than the 30-year fixed. But we were talking about the number of sales at Lake Monticello in 2021 and what the dollar value was. And so in 2021, the median sales price was $332. And I went back. I got a 20-year spreadsheet going back to 2001. The last time we matched that number was in 2006, and the interest rates was 6.5%. So we were selling homes at that price point at 6.5%.
People were putting them on the market to go find something else. There was some inventory turnover.
Go keep on going.
Yeah, no, that's, and you got to consider that, whatever your opinion and my personal ones are towards the lack of wage growth people were buying properties at those interest rates, at those average prices, in a market that was less stable than what we have today. So when you have buyers who are qualified through a more rigorous standard, and we have seen a significant amount of wage growth, which part of is what is causing the inflation that we're seeing get sticky today, because if you have one, you're going to have the other. We had a good market then, and that was prior to the great unpleasantness. And I don't those, but my purpose in saying that is that one cannot be the same. This is not the same path if we've got a more stable system for the purchasers who are out there buying these homes. But what I think we're still seeing is this COVID hangover, and in our area, this mental illness that I think people have adopted towards not wanting to leave what they've found safe and secure is part of the inventory crunch that we're seeing. We're seeing it across the nation. Florida, not quite the same, but you've got a different take on kind of how they do things. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a good take right there. If you want to mark that take right there. So this man's in the business.
We'll talk later. I don't know if I want to run something calling it a mental illness.
Okay. We can put that one in purgatory if we need to.
No, we are Marines, though, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think to a certain point, maybe not mental illness, but this hesitancy that's
PTSD.
It's okay.
That's actually a real thing.
You're damn right.
COVID
it is.
PTSD.
Yeah,
that's a real thing.
Absolutely.
So how does the COVID PTSD? Okay, how about this for us, Israel?
Okay, all right.
How does the COVID hangover or hesitancy, what do we call it, hangover or hesitancy, apply to inventory shortages in Central Virginia and in the Commonwealth?
I think people have gotten programmed to, at the moment, be in their safety zone. And part of their safety zone is the home that they've been attached to, and coupled with whatever else they see in the news, it's made them more difficult to execute from moving from where they are to what their next goal is. I think that's the level of PTSD that we're seeing in that COVID mindset.
But it's real.
PTSD.
Thank you. As Marines, we take this a little bit differently, particularly as ones who've seen combat, so it means different things. But it's real to a certain degree. Yasmina, my daughter up in Connecticut, husband has COVID. Our 1-year-old granddaughter just got COVID. Our 3-year-old grandson is about ready to get COVID. My son-in-law has COVID. And we, as grandparents, are panicking because I can't do anything to help them. I can't say, okay, Yonna, go up to Connecticut and help them because we don't want Yonna to get it and we don't want to bring it back here. So it's really, it's a real thing.
Sure, but let's talk about that. Everybody's got it. Alaska has the highest transmission rate per population in the nation. They've also got the highest survival rate. Part of that has to do with the treatments and what they've put out towards facilities to help people, but the other thing is we were programmed in the beginning to think that this was going to just annihilate everyone involved, and that's not the truth. It's not what happened, and that's just the facts.
Well,
period. End of story.
We'll kind of move back on to sales price initially,
Okay.
but somebody should read the book called Pale Rider, which was the history of
Spanish flu.
The 1918 Spanish flu, and there's a chapter in that just to talk about Alaska. That just think about what communication was back at that point. There were whole villages dying, and nobody knew about it until way after the whole.
And now we're in the age of the instant communication, to where it's everything from the people against the vaccines to the whole thing. But yeah, let's talk sales prices.
So not necessarily sale prices, but I just want to kind of add a little bit of context, right? I went back to the year that matched 330, 332, right? But 2007, it was up to 367, 2008, 338, and then the time of Great Unpleasant had happened, and that 338 dropped to 255. And I think it's important to talk a little bit about, Scott, if you can talk about what the credit process was different then versus now.
You could do stated income loans. You could. I'll tell you what. The only thing that seems similar to me now, but I don't see it here at all, is in Florida. There's these DSCRs, which is debt service recovery. So basically stating that I'm going to receive this much income on this future rental property, and I've got this much equity in my house, and those loans are getting done down there. It's not.
Is that going to creep up here?
I don't think so. Just from a regulatory standard and an inventory standard, I don't think we have enough to do what they're doing.
So if that's why is it different? Regulations different in Florida than here?
It's not. I don't think that it's not the regulation is specific, and honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
This is just coming from 2 or 3 broker friends that are down there that are doing a decent amount of them.
Why don't we talk about why we see the shortage in inventory and how we can improve this crunch, and whether we expect that inventory crunch to be alleviated in the short term. And then we also have questions that are coming in from yesterday's show about financing for age-specific communities and how difficult that financing is or is not to get. There was a 55 and over community that we discussed in Fluvanna County that I don't think is a 55 and over community anymore.
Yeah, so this is the Methodist Church or organization is putting on or trying to get a special use permit, which is not a rezoning, and I don't want to geek out too much about that. Across from the main gate of Lake Monticello, I believe it's 125 apartments, somewhere 1 and 2 bedrooms, looking to hit between the 50 to 60 percentage of area medium income, but it is not zoned. It used to be zoned age restrictive. Now they pulled that was pulled out some years, I think 2019.
Is this like Nahor Village? Or?
No, it's just across from the main gate.
Okay.
So forgot
gotcha.
I forgot the name of it. I apologize, but it's across from the main gate, the gas station up over that way, and I guess in that particular environment, that's a lease environment, but there are a couple of age restricted projects around, and I think maybe the question is what is the funding? So if I'm going to buy into a 55 and over age restrictive project, is there any funding differences on your end? Maybe that's a better way.
I think that is the question right there.
Would have loved to had this heads up yesterday. Specifically, I don't know the answer to that unless it's if you're saying that the neighborhood has its own AMI restrictions like area median income, and if that's tied into that and they somehow have to prove that in order to qualify. So there's no.
Let me try it a little bit differently,
Okay.
Scott, if you don't mind. So there's a project, Nahor Village, for instance, is age restrictive, meaning that nobody under the age of 55 can
Correct.
live in it. It's a deed restriction that's attached to it. It also means, because it's a federal law, that nobody under the age of 19 can live in there. And I guess what I'm asking is, at the age of 55, 75, 65,
A lot of people aren't working.
and how does that lending picture look?
So that is a discriminatory. Just because someone's of a certain age does not mean they can't qualify for a loan.
That's
I mean,
what I'm
I've
trying
done
to get to.
mortgages for 89-year-olds, and had everybody go, 30-year mortgage. I'm like, look, the property is tied to it, and nobody can tell them no.
What is the youngest age you can do a mortgage for?
18.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And the oldest is the 89-year-old?
That I personally have done. But
there is none.
Yeah, there's no. You can't discriminate
Against
because
age.
of their age.
Wow.
That's
Even a 30 year. Wow.
And it's funny because I've literally had this conversation. We were starting this yesterday with Pop, my father, and he wants to refinance his house. And, Dad's in his early 80s, and he goes, well, nobody's going to give me any money. I said, no.
I talked to him about this like a year ago.
I go, no, go do it,
Yeah.
go do it. He goes, but when I pass away, who's going to deal with the loan? And
Bank.
I said, you're dead. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Does it really matter?
James Watson giving you some
Hey,
props.
James.
He said he's known you for many moons.
Yes.
And then he's given you a little
since
bit of...
the Orbit days.
Yeah, I remember the Orbit days well. Perhaps we crossed paths in those Orbit
Quite
days.
possible.
And we'll leave it at that. And this
Ooh,
is also
there's
what,
a story there.
what James Watson said. He was giving you a little zinger about your age and how you're aging so well.
Oh, thank you.
He said you were in high school in 2006, and I responded, Scott is your age. And he goes, I'm joking. I've known Scott for many moons. Good crew you got up there. Kevin Higgins, giving props to Scott on his take at the beginning. This country is saturated with negativity. It's time to squeeze the sponge. I'm watching experts right now. Everything else is background noise. Thank you, Kevin, for saying
Well, we
that.
talked about that yesterday on the show. There clearly was a difference of opinion between Tony O'Brien and Chris Fairchild on a matter. It didn't really matter, but they were respectful to one another.
I mean, the whole show was respectful disagreement.
Without doubt.
The whole show was
I'm excited
respectful
about doing
disagreement.
more.
How's this question's coming in from Christopher, who's watching, and he says, are you pushing a lot of new construction loans through right now?
For the inventory, I mean, what's out there. There's people who are definitely buying new homes. I work with a builder who does a lot of turnkey, so they'll go and get them under contract 6 months prior to the house actually being built, and then we'll close them at the end.
Are you seeing a lot of new construction, Keith?
Yeah, I'm literally looking at thumbing through Carr's fourth quarter report. I'm seeing a lot of new construction. Just a follow through from yesterday's show, the project we talked about on Garden Lane out there, yesterday went in as by right, which we predicted was going to happen on the show. And so that's, I think, somewhere around 60 units going out there. So there is this trickling in of new construction. It's just not enough. As you know, we're 5.5 million units short. And it's just not enough to pick up the difference on it.
What are the highlights from the Q4 report?
So thank you for asking. I'm looking at the dashboard, and the two things that popped out was our unemployment rate is down to 2.3. This is as of November 2021. That's down over October of 2.3%. So that's a low unemployment unemployment numbers. There you go. This is what I'm looking for. Monthly permits and new construction in the metropolitan area. So this is all of Charlottesville. We're up to over quarter over quarter. We're about 150. And just to put it in perspective, that same quarter in 2017 was 50. So we're getting some more permits out there, but the reality of that, these are for development projects that already been approved over the cycle, got dirt being pushed, and they're just building them now. I just don't know how much is going to be in the pipeline for moving forward.
This from LinkedIn. Guys, live streaming on LinkedIn. That started yesterday on the I Love CVille network, as opposed to publishing the content on LinkedIn. And the engagement's been significant. I would encourage both you guys to up your LinkedIn games.
They started this morning.
With the reach we're now penetrating that platform. This is from Paul Johnson. He's works for Thrivent. This is a good question. If I was interested in getting a commercial property, would it be better to build from scratch or buy and renovate? Also, financing for commercial. Now, I know you do residential.
I do residential, but I mean, I'm right in the middle of a personal commercial renovation. So depends on what your needs is and what the cost is and what the location is. If you can find something and how you want to get the building up, there's a lot to that question. If you can find the right space that you can renovate for the right price and it meets your business needs, sure. But if you have to go out and build something new, think about where you want to do it. I mean, that question's so deep.
I would say this,
and not knowing the type of business either.
Absolutely. I would say this, that your quickest path to profitability, your quickest path to revenue generation is to probably buy something that's existing and remodel it and get cracking. Because dealing with, just on this building, we have a new awning and canopy that's going to be installed on Thursday. This has been an 18-month process for us.
You had to go through ARB,
right? ARB.
Or BAR, they call it.
Yeah, hired architectural formworks for this. Painting the building a different color took forever.
Yeah.
This new awning that's going to go in on Thursday, absolutely, Paul. I'm happy to ask that question. This new awning has been an 18-month process because it's changing the street landscape.
Yeah. Think about every business who has to do anything but signage in Albemarle County.
Dude, this has been an architectural firm, Formwork, a signage firm, Gropin, multiple presentations to BAR, a property management firm, Real Property, a remodeling firm that does commercial, specifically downtown.
And your time.
My time in the middle as the president of the building. It has been almost 2 years of my life doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The awnings are going to look great, though.
I certainly hope to God that the tenants appreciate that.
But that's just an awning.
Thank you, Scott. Right.
Right.
I couldn't even imagine building this from scratch.
We went through this with the land trust. I can speak to this in great detail, that it took forever to get a project approved and moved. But it sounds like Paul has an awesome question.
Well, no, I mean, he wants us to go down this road here. He wants to get down. And another thing that we have is there's not much land to build upon.
So that's to finish this commercial thing. It's funny, we had a business meeting yesterday talking about this internally on future renting or purchasing or building. And it's very specific as far as the commercial real estate hat on, not necessarily the funding side of it. You know, it's like residential. What is your wishes? What are you trying to achieve? What's your goals and objectives? And then trying to find something is, in commercial, believe it or not, is pretty hard, unless you're looking at a retail or something like that. But if you want
unless you have $84 million to drop on X
I'm
Park.
just thinking, like, why not? Yeah, we'll get that thing going.
Do you have a take on X?
A take? No, I don't.
I know you have a take on X.
I do, and I thought we were going to do this on Friday.
We could totally do it on Friday if you want. We can absolutely do that.
Yeah, it's
Lee Elberson. Hello, buddy.
Hey, Lee. So, X Park, as everybody knows, has been. See, I actually thought before I said something.
Well, it could potentially create more residential inventory.
Yeah.
Depending on who buys it.
Yeah. So
it could feed your businesses and my businesses because we're all on this supply chain we call real estate.
So let's back up for a second.
Yeah, please.
How long did it take you to get this awning put up?
It took a long time.
You're on 2 years.
It's just under 2 years.
So
We
now-
started talking about this in Q1, end of Q1 of 2020.
So if anybody thinks that something is going to happen there quickly, that's simply not going to happen, right? First, you got to find your buyer, right? Then I suspect, and I haven't had a chance to dig too much into it. I was going to prep for that for tomorrow for Friday, but I know it's been on the market for a while. And my suspicion is the pricing priced into the future changing of the zoning, which
100%.
hasn't happened yet. Which, as our bet has with Neil Williams, is somewhere.
Neil
Williamson, thank you.
He's watching.
Somewhere in the middle of 2023, somewhere along those lines. And then you have to go through all the site plan process that you're talking about. So that's years from now before anything at all would happen. Prime example, Friendship Court, right? I just noticed it yesterday. They put the fence up. They're starting construction on that. That's been in the process for years and years, and it's now starting to be developed.
Thank you, Stephanie Wells Rhodes, for saying, I think your building looks awesome, sleek and modern. I'm grateful for your family, as you know, and for Interstate Service Company, Stephanie, quite a bit. Scott, let's throw this to you here, okay? We're all in this, Stephanie's family is, Keith's family, my family, your family, Judah and his family, on this real estate ecosystem. As he's identified through Dr. Lisa Sturdivant, the chief economist for Virginia Realtors, real estate is second in GDP production in all of Virginia. Government contracting 1, real estate is 2. When do we start asking the question of, holy bejeebus, there's no rooftops out there because of exactly what you identified? Maybe people are incredibly trepid to put their homes on the market. Maybe it's because of COVID. Maybe it's because they realize that there's nowhere else to go.
So part of it's messaging, and I think that's part of our job, and any realtor that's out there watching is communicating that, and not that anyone isn't, but now is a fantastic time for you to be listing your property, and I'm going to serve you at a high level, and we're going to come up with a solution for what you might be looking for in the next step. Messaging is key. That's a first step, because you're only going to change the narrative that people have kind of trapped themselves inside of by communicating with them. And then from there, we've got unemployment is super low, which means that if you're out there looking for a step up job, there's a high chance that it's out there and they could be paying you a greater salary. What are you doing as an individual to, you are responsible. What is your next step? Like, if you think in that mindset and you act in that mindset and you communicate in that mindset, that's going to create the implementation and the change that's necessary for people to actually make those moves.
Now that's a sizzle reel.
There you go.
That's why I threw that question right there for you. Mark that time right there. Messaging, undoubtedly the first step. Very well said.
Thanks.
When does the messaging become actuality?
So, part of we've been trapped in this January has been cold and a little ugly weather-wise. Everyone got, we went through 2 years of of everything that's happened, and then
You're choosing your words carefully.
And then everybody got sick. So I think as we move through this and we get into this year, and as the messaging changes, as people become more comfortable, as we are humans, we are American humans who always want the next thing. That's how we're fed in social media. It's how we're fed in our news cycle. It's how we act in our lives, from the sports season to everything that's in front of us. So it really becomes a matter of when does the messaging trigger the action, and then what else is happening in the world. So as we warm up into the spring, it might not be until this summer before you get more of that actual movement, but it's coming. People are never going to stop doing people things. They're going to have babies. They're going to get divorced. They're going to do all the things that create real estate transactions, and who's going to be in front of them to execute for them when it happens?
Boom. Keith Smith.
I just realized today is 2/2/22.
That's right.
I just jotted that down.
And also Groundhog's Day.
Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, did he see a shadow or not? It's the winter thing. We got
There's
more
more
winter.
winter.
We got more
Is
winter.
it- did he
We
see
got
his-
more winter.
Did you look out the window?
Do you get, if the groundhog comes out, does that mean more window if he sees a shadow? Judah's looking it up. Anyway, we have more
Yeah.
winter, excuse me, which is awesome.
But the days we get more, but the days get longer at the same rate either way. So we're getting more sunshine. So,
There we go. And sunshine is good.
and sunshine is good.
So the reason I thought of that number was I wanted to ask you, just off the top of your head, to me, it feels there's a lack of inventory. It's been going on for a while, and I've got 20-year spreadsheets and different stuff. This kind of feels more like a normal January than
The last 2 years of COVID,
the last 2 years
Yeah.
of COVID.
where the spring market sprung in Thanksgiving or December, the year prior.
I think it just never
All right.
sprung and just kept on going.
Right.
So, you just wrapped up January. Off the top of your head, how did 2022 do versus 2021 January? Right?
For me, very similar.
Okay.
But yours is in the rears, isn't it? Is it slightly in the rears?
Well, I'm thinking loan applications.
Okay.
I
you're selling
apologize.
loan, okay.
I should have asked.
I've seen
Not
it.
closures.
It's been very active. That's not been a problem. I'm more along, and I had a weekend where it was, I had a good number of first-time home buyers who went out and had a tough.
He saw his shadow. Multiple people are saying on the feed.
Yay.
He saw his shadow.
Got it. So shadow is more okay.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to talk about the movie.
And made super strong, effective offers and didn't get across the finish line. So that was. I spent 2 days, putting my arm around some people, telling them it's going to be okay. And that, I think, as we go further in the year, we get more inventory, then we see more of them get across the finish line.
And the reason why I love doing this show on Wednesday and having this, first of all, I love you to death because fellow Marines and family.
And he's a good dude.
And he's a good dude.
Yeah.
But I'm thoroughly convinced loan applications are the leading indicator of where our market is going. It used to never be that way, right? It used to always be several years ago, we would start looking at a house.
You don't think it's, I don't mean to interrupt you. You're saying something very poignant, and I think this is a great topic. You think it's loan applications and not listings? Because don't the listings drive loan applications? Because people see potential?
Yeah, so under the assumption, listings are the game. That's the ground game, right? From my world, listing is the ground game, right? If without listings, right? Like currently we have no listings. Yonna and I have no listings. Without listings, we're not going to be seeing loan applications. I agree 100%. But what I'm trying to do, Jerry, is look at some sort of leading indicator of how the market is changing or not changing.
Well, I mean, I can tell you. All right. So for me, there's the way that I track is leads, applications, pre-approvals, deals. There's a formula there, but the inventory needs to support that, because typically, if I tell you that I have 8 people go out and make offers over the weekend, I'm going to think that 6 of those 8 are going to land. But
I'm taking this from a different perspective. I'm taking this from a perspective of a real estate agent, right? And where the market has been going. And I may be going down the wrong road, and you guys correct me if I am. But a couple of years ago, the first conversation I had with a potential buyer would not be talk to Scott Morris, find out what you qualify for before we go look at homes. That is a norm now.
Yeah.
Right? Years ago, 2006, 2008, 2012, whatever it was, 18 something when I first started doing this, you would start looking at the houses first, right? And then you say, look, I like the house. I kind of fell in love with it. This is good. Hey, let's reach out to Scott, see what we can do. That was the path. That is not the case. So the reason why I think you seeing loan applications is an indicator of where the listing market and where the overall market is going is you're seeing more or less. That might indicate the health of the market. Am I making any sense at all?
Yeah, no, I get that.
That was well said.
I'm seeing more. So
It's a Shendo joke.
That was well said.
that's not, to me, there's no lag there at the moment. That's not,
So the short answer is you're seeing as many loan
Applications are
as it was in that end of it.
Yes.
So then it goes back to Jerry's comment.
Yeah, what are they going to do if the applications are in? And how long are the applications don't know how to explain this the right way. How long are the applications viable?
All right, so viable is.
Maybe that's not the right word.
Well, yeah, all right, I'll touch,
That's a great question,
We'll do the whole
by the way.
spread. So, applications typically, let's say, every 2 applications equals 1 pre-approval. Of all those pre-approvals, typically for the month following, those are going to turn into contracts. Like, that's what you want to see. That's ideal. The pre-approval itself is good for 120 days. At 90 days, I'll typically renew credit just to make sure that nothing has happened in their world.
They didn't buy a car.
They didn't buy a car, or if we were to get under credit, I'd have to have an updated credit profile for greater than 30 days going into wherever that future purchase is coming from.
So I'm kind of going into the psychology of a buyer and a seller at this particular point. Why I think this is the question from my perspective is important, is this media, everything we're talking about is there's no inventory, there's no inventory, there's no inventory. That being said, you're seeing the same applications.
Correct.
Right? So if inventory is dropping, you're seeing the same application. There's still buyers out there that are trying, they're 110%.
People's human behavior is not going to change. There are still people who need to go out and buy a home. So it's how do we get someone who is currently in a house to go, you know what, we've outgrown this. This doesn't fit my needs. Let me go find the next thing. Like,
Well, and I think part of it might be what he started with, and I thought he started with certainly something I 100% agree with you. And you know when I stand with that topic.
No, I get it.
But part of that is getting rid of this scared mentality of living fear.
So how do we
as
do that?
opposed to living
messaging is how we do it.
This.
Yeah.
So, very interesting. National Association of Realtors just put out NIMBYism, how to, as real estate agents, it's a few months old, how do we as real estate professionals in the space, all of us at this table, deal with that, talk about that. And literally messaging is literally what we are doing, this conversation we're having right now is helpful, is to move it forward. But I found it extremely interesting about that, because if you take a look at CAR's numbers, just what county over county or jurisdiction over jurisdiction of fourth quarter of 2021 versus 22, Fluvanna County was down in 14% in sales. Why is that? The market is hot. It's no inventory. But you're still seeing applications, which I think is really an interesting indicator. I really do. Your applications are exactly this or close to what they were at this time last year.
Absolutely.
Well, why don't we tie it then into what Kevin Higgins is saying? And Kevin, you routinely contribute to our shows, and we're grateful for your participation, sir. He says, what are Scott's and Keith's thoughts on downtown Waynesboro, 5 minutes from Western Albemarle? Will the Disgrace Hotel in Afton Mountain eventually change the game for Waynesboro in that corridor? And he asks, is Waynesboro about to be the new Charlottesville? Inventory, approachable price points, and let's cut to the chase. Albemarle and Charlottesville are pricing people out of the market, and the Crozet market in particular, there's not much place for people, there's not much left for new rooftops in Crozet. So Waynesboro, Scott and Keith's take on that.
It's another place for growth. I mean, it goes back to, I'm all about the outer areas. Greene County, Buckingham, Fluvanna.
Rep the Pap.
Yeah, Culpeper. Culpeper is, that's got its own development. Like, we've got a schools issue. Like, we need, to support more. We've got some.
But how many people live in Culpeper County?
60,000.
Yeah.
60,000 people live in Culpeper County?
That is off the top of my head.
I can look that up real quick. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So you're saying we need new schools over there?
Yeah, we've got 2 high schools. But to support like even the development that's coming in now at Clevenger Corner, that I can't, the specific name I can't think of, but that's the area. That's a big concern for now. While everybody's cheering 700 units, at the same time there's some. Gosh, how are we going to support that with our current structure as far as like social programs, stuff like that.
And he's in the ballpark, 52,552 as of 2020, and I would imagine that number is upticking in Culpeper. Keith, what are your thoughts here?
Well, the reason I asked that question is you take some of the outer counties, Greene, Fluvanna, Louisa, they're half those numbers, right, or less on that end of it. So, it takes on it when you get to a density or that many folks in a jurisdiction, it kind of changes a little bit. My ears picked up when you said everybody was championing a 700-unit project in Culpeper. I'm not so sure that would happen here. I don't think you would have this big upswell.
I say everybody.
Okay.
Let me say, in real estate professionals,
but it got approved though, right?
it did. But there's a lot of mixed emotion because people are like,
Sure.
it's too much, it's too many. Like, and then there's this whole. From a development standpoint, farmland forever. It's like, okay, I get that, but at the same time, like, people need a place to live, or where do you go? I mean, that's why you do see a significant amount of people migrating to other states that might be a little more pro-growth.
So I'm talk about dollars, right? I'm looking at the fourth quarter so dollar volume. So this is all of cars. So this does not include the other side of the mountain, right? Which we can surely bring in for next week some information for that. We have access to it. I just didn't bring it with me. Fourth quarter 2021, the median sales price was $557. Interesting, down over 2020, not by much, but just a little bit, $567. And then it drops in 19 to $397, 18. These are the same fourth quarters, $340. 348 and 18, and then 19 was a little bit higher than that at 368. So back to this price, where are people going to go? And back to the comment about the other side of the mountain, that's where that's where your 200 is. That's where your 300 is. Lake Monticello, and we've been talking about this for a couple of days, the median list price right now, I believe, is 330. I don't have the documents in front of me, but somewhere around that. So that's kind of on the upper end of affordable, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, God, I like to see properties at the lake at 275. That's, personal opinion.
When's the last time you've seen? Well, there are a few 275.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've been on the market for a while.
Yeah, they have a
all
little TLC issues.
Yeah.
That you can say. How many are active at the lake right now?
I don't have today's numbers. Yesterday was 11.
11 out of 4,300?
That was yesterday, yeah. And on Monday, we're bringing in Christy Beck and Maggie Gunnels, and we're actually going to take a deeper dive into that stuff. I'm excited about it.
11. So this question, I mean, if more inventory, and thank you for the follow-up on this question, Stephen, more inventory on Waynesboro and on the other side of the mountain is certainly good for Scott's business. Get Scott's take on that, please. Jerry, is it good for Keith's business?
I mean, it's
definitely good for your business.
Yeah, more inventory anywhere is. I mean, I work throughout the state. I've got
and North Carolina.
And North Carolina. So that is.
Yours is less boots on the ground at the house in different zip codes.
Correct. If I'm face to face, it's to help somebody solve a technical problem or a trust concern. That's basically like they want to see who they're working with, or they cannot figure out how to upload, download, create whatever document. That's when we're face to face most of the time.
Is it good for your business?
The ability to put a family in a home is good for my business. It's good for everybody at this table. It's good for the family. So when we're looking for the first time, or people that are below $300,000, we're going to Buckingham. We're going to the other side of the mountain. It's good for business. It's very interesting. We've been having this conversation for quite some time. The tree streets and the other side of it. You're starting to see a little bit more development happen on that side of the mountain. I think that's maybe where the question is leading that way. It's a little easier to get projects approved, a little easier to get projects built over there. So I see that trend continuing. We've been having this conversation where gas gets over 3 or close to whatever it is at the moment. Is that going to impact the other side of the mountain? And I can tell you by our conversations and buyers and sellers, that's just not happening. They need a home, to Scott's perspective. They need a home, and that's where they're going.
Thoughts?
Same, yeah. I mean, then same. That's what's occurring. Culpeper people are migrating. What's available in Orange. It's where can we find that kinder price point? And that's not Charlottesville, Culpeper, Richmond. Then it turns into Petersburg and Powhatan. Any area where. Can I live my life, commute to my work, and keep my family fed, happy, and secure? And can we do that at a price point that I can actually afford? Where do I need to go to do that? And that you're going to find as no matter the location is going to be the key.
This is a good one from Grayson, who's watching in Chesterfield. Jerry, Scott said that his loan applications are the same now as they've been in previous years. Can you ask him specifically if he's seen a shift an area of those applications?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, but that's more a direct relation to me more so than. So what?
Do you guys track that? Like where the applications are coming from?
I track who they come from. So in that sense, yes.
You meaning real referrals?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
But 3 years ago, I wasn't doing as much in Richmond as I am now. So that's probably more relative to my outreach than it is the specific areas. Like I'm sure that those people, if they hadn't have found me, they're going to apply somewhere. So I don't know if there's a.
Let's talk about.
I don't know if that correlates.
Let's talk about process a little bit. That might help answer the question. You don't necessarily know if I give you Mr. and Mrs. Smith and say, look, we're out looking for a home. Please find out what they qualify for. You don't know where they're looking for a home. You just know that for most.
Correct.
Most
I
part.
have instances where I will get somebody pre-approved, and now this is probably me in my goal review conversation and a question I may not have asked. Like, all right, well, we're all ready to move to Florida. It's like. So it's like, well, that is awesome, and I know that we can do this, and let me get you with some, and then I'll refer that out to somebody.
But do you not see the zip codes and addresses of the homes that are closed?
So
what do you mean?
Yeah, so what happens is Mr. and Mrs. Miller reach out to Keith and Yonna and say, look, we're trying to buy a house. Generally what happens is we'll reach out to Scott and say, look, they're looking in some areas, so you need to pre-qualify them. Oh, by the way, more than likely there's going to be an HOA, so you got to pack a little HOA numbers into that. This is what we think. But we are not project specific, property specific at that time. Years ago, it was the opposite. Years ago, it would say, hey, Scott, Mr. and Mrs. Miller are looking at this individual property. We would send an MLS sheet and say, run some numbers on that.
So a lot of times what I will do
But that's
is
not happening now.
I'll ask where they are shopping because I want to know what county to pull taxes on.
There you go.
And I'll take a fictional property at a price point that works and say, this number is specific, assuming that the rate doesn't change. This is your property taxes, the no HOA. Like here's a like property to kind of what you're looking at. This should be very close to where you're going to be at your final number.
We really should do a live walkthrough of a client and how this process works. Either
the flip book.
The flip book and maybe not today. We can schedule this for another show because we're going to have to do some specific work on it.
We got to find the client that's willing to do that.
Well, we'll just make a fictitious client.
Okay.
Right. And what the income is and so forth and so on, and walk through that process because I think that's important.
Why is it not project specific anymore?
Because you don't know what they're going to end up buying. Specific property. Now it is. So
it's the market, Jerry.
Well, even without the market, if John and Jane tell me that they're going to look at 3 properties this weekend, and they send me all 3 properties, I'm going to send them payments for all three properties,
there you go.
so that they go in making a decision based off of the monthly budget number versus whatever the $325,000 or $45,000 with escalation could be. They're gonna have a number at $350, a number at $340, and a number at $330, and based off of that, they know what to expect when they get under contract.
This is a negotiation thing too, right? So
Sure.
right, because we need to understand what the client can afford, what they're comfortable with, and then sometimes they have this conversation. Well, I don't want to spend more than this, right? Then reality starts hitting in, and we go back and forth. But generally, the way, at least from our perspective, the way this process is working, we're trying to determine what bandwidth the buyer can buy at. And then we're trying to fit the product into that, because now we got to go negotiate that, right, to go ahead and do this. And I'm just saying, years ago, when interest rates was 6%, that wasn't the case, right? We would designate a property because we weren't having 12 offers, right? We were having one offer, our offer. And then we would say, okay, Scott, let's talk this through and then move forward.
How about this one? This is a follow-up on this topic. This is from Nicholas, who you just met over lunch. I'd like to follow up on that question if Scott has seen a demographic shift. All the news keeps saying new buying is millennial buyers. Is Scott seeing that trend play out
Great question.
in his market? Good. That is a good question, Nick.
So all new buyer being millennial? No. I would say I have probably, let's say 20% first-time buyers are people who are, what am I? Am I a
You're a millennial.
I'm a geriatric millennial, or I am
You might be the one right before.
Gen X.
'Cause I'm a geriatric millennial.
I'm a Gen X.
Yeah, I think you're a Gen Xer.
All right,
Yeah.
so
So you're the youngest of Gen Xers.
You over 40?
I am 43.
Yeah,
Am I
dude,
43? I'm like 42 or 43.
This guy is freaking aging amazingly.
So-
Whatever this guy is doing, we all need a piece of
So
it.
I'm either a
You're the youngest Gen Xer.
I am the youngest Gen Xer.
Yeah.
I grew up on a party line on a gravel road, which means when I picked up the phone, my neighbor down the road could also be on the phone, and I have to go, "Oh, sorry for jumping on," and hang up.
Is that true?
That is 100% true.
It
That's-
had like a can with a string in it, right?
that's
Is that really true?
100% true.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, in Fluvanna County, on a party line. So like that.
Vanished.
So when you were talking to these girls in high school, your neighbors were eavesdropping on you?
By high school, that was not the case.
Okay.
But like elementary school, definitely the party line thing existed.
Okay.
So, point being to that, 45 to 55-year-olds who are purchasing a home for the first time, I bet is probably 10 or 20% of my business.
45 to 55-year-olds that are first-time home buyers?
First-time home buyers.
So let's define that, because the definition of a first-time home buyer.
So not someone who has purchased a home outside of, okay. All right, so
You gotta define that.
maybe they first purchased a home prior to 2009, lost it, and now they're coming back. So,
Okay.
or someone who literally has never owned a home before and has finally got, they're structured in their life, and now they're like, I need something of my own.
So 2016, I bought,
Wow.
sold it. As long as I'm 3 years later, I'm now considered a first-time home buyer.
That is correct.
Really?
Yeah.
From a government lending perspective, yes.
But those folks, do they not have, okay, I understand the dynamic of someone who loses it and either is bankrupt or foreclosed upon. But the one that purchased a home and sold it and then waited 3 years is likely in an incredibly better financial position than someone that is purchasing for the first time authentically and
I
genuinely.
think likely is pretty speculative.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
So-
you never
After
know
selling the...
you don't know what people are
Yeah.
going through, a divorce, a medical thing, all
Sure.
this different stuff that creates the transactions that
Interesting.
separates from the property. They could be they could have gone through a much worse financial period, and now they are in a position where, hey, look, I went through some things, I've got my stuff back together, I need something of my own. Like that's where that next step occurs.
Interesting.
So it's important in this conversation when somebody says first-time home buyer,
I didn't know that.
they may not be a millennial, right? That's why age is so important to take a look at on where the buyer profiles are and the seller profiles are. But if you have not owned a home for 3 years, you are now under the federal guidelines at the moment considered a first-time home buyer.
Let's follow up on the question, because this obviously is a topic right here. What percentage is first-time home buyer authentically, literally the first one they've ever purchased, and millennial of your business?
Probably 60%.
60%.
Yeah.
Nick, that for those that are asking, that is a large chunk of the business, and that still is ready to boom even more.
Well, that's 23.5 million number, right?
Yeah.
It's going there, but this is the buyer profile. This is what I particularly love doing. I love to help people, period. But there's an extra special little pep in your step when you're trying to find somebody
Because of the emotional response.
Absolutely.
And how grateful they are to you.
Well, and you walk away from going and you set somebody up for some future success, and that's an important thing.
So are you positioning your business, obviously this is helping you with reaching millennials on social. What do you expect, or what are business trends, macro, of how that percentage is going to increase or decrease? What are you hearing from your colleagues next few years? Because he's identified multiple times, is it 25 million?
23 and a half.
23 and a half millennials about to enter the market to buy.
That's
Well,
exactly right.
are entering. Well,
That's
on-
humongous percentage.
It is. And
It's the largest buyer
so
program.
year over year for the what I've said numerous times on this program is from the first time I was on, prior to everything happening with COVID and interest rates and all of these things, we were entering a 5-year period of exponential growth from a demographic of buyer that needed a place to go. We are still inside of that, and with this inventory lag, it's going to put these people into rentals, and it's going to be it's going to be a delayed process. So for the less inventory there is, the longer it's going to take to put these people into a home, and they're not going to go away. They just won't go under contract. So it's going to extend this age group of purchasers for as long as we can continue to build inventory to support the process.
When does it start impacting the generation after millennials?
Oh, wow.
The generation after millennials, we need that millennial flow chart.
That's a Z, right?
Is that
No,
Gen Zers? We always talk about this, J-Dubs.
And there's a new one they just inserted, too.
Well, Generation Alpha is our kids.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Our kids, Scott and I's kids, are Gen Alpha. What is after? And my wife is going to be like, Jerry, you need a flow chart about this. You ask this question constantly. Judah Wicker, are we going to the 4 shot or just hearing some audio here from you?
We're just going to do audio.
Okay, so Judah's got the answer here.
What are you looking for?
The generation after millennial is what?
After millennials, let's see, is...
I'm pulling the report up.
He's calling that up, Judah Wicker, director. Because those folks are about to enter, I'm curious of the age range of when they start entering the
I'm pulling
market.
it up right now.
Generation Z is after millennials.
Generation Z, and what age range is that?
Let's see.
So older boomers are born between 46 and 54. Younger boomers 55 to 64. That's the one I'm in. Gen X is 65 to 79. Older Gen Y is 1980 to 89. Younger Gen Y or millennials is 90 to 98, and Z is 99 to present.
Zs are also Zoomers, are mid to late 90s to early 2010s.
Zs are, according to
Okay,
NAR,
so they are beginning to trickle.
So they're
into,
upper 20s now.
yeah, they're trickling into the home market. Absolutely.
Upper 20s. So Nicholas, you're a Zer that's watching.
yeah, so
And he's looking to buy.
totally.
And he could be potentially, and I'm not saying him specifically, but are the millennials potentially cannibalizing the Zers?
Well, this
from
pool,
buying.
this pool is bigger than this 23.5 because
We
there's-
need that flow chart, J-Dubs. Go ahead, sorry, Keith.
No, it's okay. As you said, the back end on the back end of the Z's, right? The ones that were born from 99 until present that are hitting these early 20s coming in here. But if you pull out another stat, the average buyer's hitting around 33 right now. Somewhere along those lines of the first-time home buyer on that end of it. I didn't bring those numbers with me at the moment, so that's from memory on that end of it. So I think the Z's are coming up against it, but this 2.3 million is a number. But I want to, can I pivot a little bit on the
Sure,
question?
yeah.
So of the 60% first-time home buyer, recent conversations, they walk in thinking they're going to spend $1. Find out that they have to spend $1.25. How many of them are bumping up in the process?
Good question.
Right?
So, I mean, a lot of that is a conversation that I start with. What are you paying in rent at the moment? What do you think your rent's going to be in the next 3 years? What do you expect to pay for a home, and what do you think mortgage rates are today? And so, for some of them, they have an expectation that they're going to step up, and some of them need another person to combine with to make it realistic because they're already splitting rent. So that can be a situation that, just like everything else, is very specific to each individual's unique lifestyle and how they want to move forward.
So are you seeing people starting off at a lower number through that conversation and the reality of the market? They're upping their loan amounts that they're trying to
Sure, but they're also, the conversation I have very often is how do we, we know everything's expensive. That's something that gets said quite often. Like, the market seems really high right now. Do you think it's going to come down in another year or so?
Your answer is probably absolutely no.
And then I try to condense the entire conversation that we have every week about that into look at the number of buyers. Let's look at how structured those existing borrowers are. There's not some gloom and doom level of foreclosures, and even if there were some that are coming on, there's not enough inventory to support that in those areas.
All that's going to do is help inventory.
And that's a nationwide problem. That's not a. Yeah. So that's another thing that everybody, I think, gets maybe not gives more focus than it should. When they talk about the level of foreclosures and the forthcoming foreclosures, think about where that's a national number you're seeing. That is not a regional number.
Yeah, nationally, in the height of a time of great, I can't even say it anymore. Unpleasantness was like 10 million units. This is like potentially a million or somewhere
let's say
along those
it was 3. How many of those 3 are going to be in Dallas, Arizona,
Sure.
Atlanta,
Sure.
San Francisco? Like, that's,
I'm not smart enough to do the math live here, but what I would love to figure out, in 2008, the average sales price in Fluvanna County was $330. Today it's $330, and 2008 was 6.5%, assuming some sort of down payment amount that was equal. I'm just curious what the monthly payment was in 2008 versus now. It's got to be substantially less, right?
Yeah, I would say
half?
20,
Not half.
No, not half. No. 20. Let's say $320,000, 6% interest with everything is $2,400 a month versus
14,
19.
19. Okay.
So that's a pretty substantial savings. You're talking, off the top of my head, like 13% a month. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Why did you unpack that number of why in 2008 the average transaction in Fluvanna County was, you said 330?
Roughly 330.
And in 2021 the average transaction in Fluvanna County is 330? Did you
un-
unpack that, or why do you think that is?
Because and the reason I wanted to talk about, everybody thinks the prices are super high now. They were at this point one time before. That was my unpacking of it, right? At this point, what's the difference? How many number of units? I simply didn't unpack that, and I just don't want to start running numbers for the sake of running numbers. But what I wanted to do was when people are saying, oh my God, I'm paying $330, it's the highest it's ever been, that's not necessarily true. It was
Especially coupled with a lower median income and a higher interest rate.
That's exactly right. So 2008, the income was considerably less than what.
And the rates were higher.
And the rates were higher.
But people were also being approved without the same lending standards, so the debt to income was
Well,
so you potentially had a larger buying pool,
correct.
is what you're saying?
Yes. And we were also operating in a level of without fear. People weren't scared of anything.
Right.
It was,
But is the buyer pool, in fact, actually larger if people are Zoom towning from anywhere and coming here and working from ISPs for out-of-market companies?
So the unpacking that you want me to do, and I will do that for a future show.
You want to give it some thought.
I need to give it some thought. I need to look at some numbers and look at volumes and how many purchases were and listings and all that kind of great.
Because that's a hell of a statistic.
And I just wanted to note that sales price, we were there once before. Now, what happened after that?
Right. It was bad news bears. But we have preventative measures to keep that from happening.
And natural appreciation, like just because we are where we were price point wise 10 years ago, let's take into consideration the fact that on average, if you look at
So if you would have bought it and hold it,
yeah,
you would have broke even.
You'd be flat. But you'd have the tax advantages.
Well, not you wouldn't be flat because you'd be paying into your principal, so you would walk away with some cash at the table. But as far as purchase to sale price, you'd be flat.
So there were, this is probably 3 or 4 years ago, people who held and didn't walk away that were just 4 years ago hitting what they purchased at in 2006.
So this we go back to the secret sauce of making a little extra payment every month. So if I bought this 10 years ago at that same point and I was kicking in a couple extra months a payment throughout till it's a principal of the year, my math would be very different now 10 years later from that as far as what kind of net I would walk away.
And they almost certainly refinance at some point and have a lower mortgage rate than where they started at to begin with.
What's the percentage of the refinance?
Right now, for me personally or in general, I'd have to look up what
No, I mean like someone who has a loan.
So that's a question that that goes along with what I ask people is you may not be in just this house for less than 10 years, but you quite possibly would not be in this mortgage for less than 10 years. So let's assume that once you have some equity and you need a roof because you bought the house, it was near its life expectancy. Now you've got some equity. You're going to need instead of doing a home equity line of credit, you maybe do a cash out refinance. You take it for some other things, and so you may not be in this mortgage forever. Is something that people need to consider as well when they're making these decisions about, rates move from 3.25 to 3 3/4. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's like, is it that big of a deal? Like,
we talked about this when this started 3 years ago, that my personal concern was everybody would think 3% was normal, and it's not.
But I think that's like it's like the news cycle. It's like 6 months from now, whatever it is it's going to be
forgotten.
Deal with the reality in front of you,
except for COVID.
Yeah.
So go back to, I'm just flipping through this report, which I have to unpack these numbers. So these are just raw numbers, just reading up from the Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors report. But it's interesting, on page 10 of it, the 2021 fourth quarter, this is fourth quarter new construction median sales price was 402. In 17 it was 468. So that's roughly 60 some odd $1,000 higher in 2017, which makes me go, I want to take a look at that. And then it took a huge drop in 19 down to 367 and to start working its way up a little bit. I thought that was an interesting number to chat about.
Do you think that has to do with possibly the limited number of new construction projects and the areas in which those were growing at the time? So if Glenmore was, say, seeing a lot of new rooftops in 2017, and then a Ryan or a Liberty got a lot of openings in 2019 at a lower price point, do you think that helped drive that average? Or
so I
maybe in that case it might have been a Stanley.
Yeah.
So what in my opinion is, because I've been tracking this stuff pretty quickly, and if we can take a look at it, 2017 was mostly SFDs, single-family detached. When I dig into that 402, I'll bet you the percentage of attached is much higher than the percentage of detached, right? And because back in 17, the developers were building more single-family detached homes, higher price. Market started changing, development requirements started changing, and they started packing in. We just know that in Fluvanna County, right? There's the first time there was a attached product coming out there in Fluvanna County.
Is Fluvanna getting a lot of townhouses?
They just, the one across the lake is built out. Colonial Circle is going to have about 100 of them somewhere coming in. It's going to be breaking ground in the next few weeks on that end of it. So if I dig into that 402, I'll bet you a huge percentage of that is attached homes, duplexes, 5-row townhomes, 4-row townhomes, which are at a lower price point because you can fit more on a piece of property. And I think in 17, you'll see most of it being larger.
How about this? It's a follow-up here. It's a good question. How about this from Brian on LinkedIn? Why are there not that many townhouses in Albemarle County, Keith?
So it goes through the approval process. There's more in Albemarle County than there is in by volume of the 6 jurisdictions in there, but is there enough is more the question. But there's, Crozet has them, there's multiple projects. We can dig into those numbers at a next show and spread them out where the attached are and the detached are.
Kevin asks, and Kevin, you've asked good questions today, so you guys both sound very promising for the rest of the year. Or how do you sound for the rest of the year?
I mean,
He always is.
Yeah. I don't see.
You're becoming a very much a voice of reason for folks that watch the network. I mean, I hope you realize.
Well, I appreciate that. But I mean, I think just take a look at what's around you and look at the mechanics. Look at what's there. If as long as there's 20 offers on every home that pops up, the biggest thing needs to be how is your lender and agent supporting you to make your offer as strong as possible? How do you not look into the future and go and not see nothing but potential growth in that aspect? And how do you contribute to the messaging to get people who have been thinking about making a decision off the fence to list their property and then into the circle to communicate with the lender, and let's be looking at what we can qualify for with the proceeds of that sale to make the purchase for the next property.
Yes. Look, the reality of it is, back in 2006, we sold 300 units at 6.5%. The reason of mortgage rate, the reason I wanted to toss that out there, as interest rates go up, that's not going to really slow down the sales volume, unless it gets much higher than those kind of numbers. But I think when we take a look at the end of 2022 and we have this conversation next year, because of the restriction on inventory, we're probably not going to match the number of sales year over year. We may be flat, but I don't see a huge increase in the volume of sales. That being said, I do see a single-digit year-over-year appreciation. Right, homes. If you buy a home now, if you list a home now,
100%. We may not sell more homes, but the homes that we're selling are going to be worth more money.
Thank you.
Can you not? And based on that statistic, will you potentially be able to do the same revenue?
Well, that's a crystal ball. That wasn't a statistic.
If the homes, maybe not as many transactions.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But revenues that approach the same totals of years past.
Well, that's the reason I was asking the question. Does this January feel like a January 2017, 2018? To me, it feels more like it, based on my data that I've been running for forever. On the end of it, this feels more like a normal January. Snow being on the ground for 30 days isn't helping that normal January process, and I think maybe there's going to be a more traditional spring market, right, with folks coming on the market in probably February, March, that kind of level.
I agree with that. An additional key point to that is going to be how quick can everyone act? Does a seller need more time? So we're doing rent backs, that sort of thing. How can we be as accommodating on both sides, buyer and seller, and how can we really effectively serve a client? So for me, that means if I can get you underwritten and a loan commitment before we even go into the purchase process, so the only thing that we need is a contract and an appraisal to close. That way I can go to the listing agent when you make your offer and say, hey, this is done. The buyers have already been committed. All we need to do is get these two things. Give me a contract, let's let these guys win, and let's get an appraisal and know that we're going to meet your value.
So thank you for bringing it up, because that was a question that I just jotted down. How is this timeline looking now for you? And what can you share with us that are in the field and folks that are going to buy or sell? So what I heard was, go through the process as much as you can prior to go looking.
100%.
And does that shorten the timeline back to 30 days? What's the normal turn time?
So
days?
Normal turn time. Now this is where we kind of get a little gray with the scenario is. The listing side is going to say, well, if you want to do that, how can we close in 21 days? Sure, if we can get the appraisal back. But if your client's going to need another potential 60 days before they're ready to move out of the house, what do you need me to close in 21 for? But that's enough.
Well, that's because the seller wants to close in 21 days, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we start pulling out the tools of seller possession and all these kind of different tools.
How about this question for you guys? This came up on the I Love CVille show. Charlottesville City, for example, has increased assessments double digits. Albemarle County as well.
That's coming. I mean, the government's always, you know, they're the rake. They're going to take.
They're also going to do an increase in tax rate.
That's interesting.
So they're talking a double-digit increase in assessments, and right now they're considering a 13-cent increase in tax rate per $100 of real estate. So
And
you're getting stung twice.
You know, and who's that going to affect the most? That's going to affect the people who are already in affordable housing positions, driving them out of the area. It's more gentrification. It's more everything that Scott hates about the government.
So I didn't unpack the numbers, right? But I'm just reading straight up from the CAR report, fourth quarter 2021 versus fourth quarter 2020. The sales price actually went down. It went from 403, this is the median sales price in the city of Charlottesville, went from 403 to 399. That's roughly a 1% drop.
So here's a post.
And that may be why.
Here's a post that I think really puts it in a nutshell. Then we'll get the expert's opinion over here. This is from Kenneth Martin. I read this yesterday. With an average of about a 10% rise in city real estate assessments, along with raising the city's real estate tax rate by 10 to 13 cents per $100 of value, many city property owners may be facing 20 to 25% increases in actual real estate taxes for the next year.
Yeah. So, and this goes back to
Kenneth Martin right there.
This goes back to people who want to give you a hug about their policy and everything else, but then create these policies that affect the affordable housing people who are living in a home who are going to be forced to sell that house and move 30 to 40 minutes away to something that they can comparably live in to meet the same standard.
This is the conversation we had yesterday, right, with the Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors at the table about mom and dad, my mother and father, right?
Getting gentrified out.
Their taxes are raising in such a rate that's not matching with their pension, because their pension's kind of fixed, right, on that end of it, and they're getting to the point that their tax bill is kind of is rather burdensome on it, so much so that we're having a conversation.
Look at my dad. Same thing. A teacher in the county for
Sure.
30 years, who lives on a farm that in the 2000 and right around 08, 09, that was the first time that the property doubled in value on assessments.
Well,
Doubled.
Could this? All right, let's ask the other side of this. And no one wants to see people lose homes or get priced out or gentrified or this old guard pushed out. Well, let's talk about it from an economic standpoint. Could this open up inventory?
How much? Some.
It will, but at a certain price point, right?
And isn't that maybe that price point's the new price point?
You and I have this conversation, this debate live all the time about should UVA bring second-year students on grounds. And my opinion is it depending on location, property type, and all this stuff. I think you'll see that happen in us, and it's just going to be students that are on the outer rims are just going to come in and fill those slots, and maybe the ones that are out are just going to end up hitting the market end of it. It's kind of the same thing, in my opinion. That it's just that's the thing of gentrification. That's the downside of it.
Have you seen a double-digit increase in assessments at the same time you've seen a 10 to 13 cent increase in tax rate? I mean, that is a lot. Is it not? You've been in this since '87.
Yeah, that
at the same time.
Yeah, that's
because normally you see the assessments, but tax rate not necessarily.
So let's make sure we don't get down too much of a slippery slope here. This is the discussion. This isn't done. This isn't going to happen.
But they got to fund school reconfiguration.
There's a public process to go through that, and as we talked about, what might happen if certain elected officials say, look, we can raise the interest rate, the tax rate, and the assessments are here, but we do not want to. Jesse Rutherford said we want to make this revenue neutral. Then they're going to have to cut stuff out of the budget.
Right. I don't see that happening in Charlottesville or Albemarle. I see that happening in Nelson, that is more fiscally conservative with how they spend taxpayer dollars.
Well, I wouldn't say yes, I wouldn't say no. I'm just saying that's...
There's another way, and that is, what are you doing to generate more tax revenue outside of just
Incremental
that?
sources of revenue. That's
Yeah.
what I highlight all the time.
Yeah, and we talked about that yesterday, the struggle with that is in Fluvanna County and other jurisdictions.
Fluvanna County leaned on utilities over other developmental tax growth and put themselves 20 years behind the curve.
No, it was closer to 40.
Yeah.
40 years behind the curve.
Yeah, Louisa County got water long before we,
Yeah.
about 40 years
Well,
ago.
yeah, and then, but they're pumping it out of the James River. Anyways, I've got a whole.
Well, that's another show right there. Okay, so two Fluvanna guys right here that are very passionate about the counties they live and grew
The
up in.
problem is I'm paying taxes there still.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Scott
Scott's not.
pieced out,
Yeah.
and he's in a different position.
Just saying.
And not only are you doing that, you're aqua at the lake.
Correct,
I learned
yeah.
a lot about aqua yesterday.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I understand it, but I come from a different perspective. I know why my rates are my rates is because Lake Monticello did a lousy job
Yeah.
of doing it. Apologize for my
Sure,
language there.
no, it's totally fine. So,
No pun intended there, by the way.
pun was intended, perhaps. So did you finish your thought on the tax increase?
Yeah,
The tax rate
I was trying to-
because that could impact the market big time.
Yeah, so I was trying to dance my way around it, as I tend to do from time to time. Look, I think if they're really going to track that kind of tax rate increase and that kind of stuff, they're going to have to adjust the budget a little bit. I can't see, somebody has to do the math for us. Somebody has to do an exercise, and maybe Bill or somebody who's watching it can do it and say, okay, my house is worth this today with this new rate and this new thing, how much actual dollars I'm going to pay a year. That would be helpful in this discussion on that end of it, but somebody has to have that discussion with the elected officials so they understand, and I'm sure they do, the impact on the individuals, and some stuff may come off the table, and maybe affordable housing hopefully won't be, but
I mean, I don't think it's going to be school reconfiguration that comes off the table, and that's a $75 to $100 million price
yeah,
tag.
but that's a CIP thing, Jerry, and so that doesn't get funded in one cycle.
Sure, it's years.
It's years
Yeah,
and years
100%.
and years out,
Yeah.
out on that end of it. So CIP is capital improvement projects. What I'm talking about, if they want to keep that in there, then maybe the nuts and bolts of an operational side of thing might have to be cut. Goods and services on that end of it, because, if Bill's house goes up, and I don't know what the number is, double or half or whatever it is, than he's paying now, that's a conversation that has to be had. I mean, we're having it with my mother and father. They're at a point.
Any thoughts? Anything you want to offer? And Nick says he loves the frustration you just showed because he can tell you care. And you do care.
Yeah, I do care. I've got strong opinions that I won't share in public about the government. So, and their ability to, enact policies that are in 100%, that contradict everything that
The people they're trying to serve and fight for.
They can't stop getting out of their own way. It's it's a classic story.
And and what he's saying is, and I'm also choosing my words carefully. How can you be a champion for affordable housing and fighting for families and folks living on the margin when you make decisions like 13-cent potential tax rate hikes?
Well, the decision hasn't
And
been
it's-
made yet.
Okay, but it's being discussed.
Sure.
It's being discussed because those are contradictions.
Yeah, so look, get involved,
Yeah.
right? But we'll as you know, I've done this more than once. I tend not to throw elected officials under the bus.
You have not. You have not.
Because I know how.
I don't think we have either.
No,
So yeah, this goes back to messaging, and my message is that's a bad plan.
it is a bad plan.
I think that's we're all in agreement that that's a bad plan.
Yeah.
We're all in agreement. How about some? You guys did well. Some closing thoughts here on the program, and also, friend, you may know him. I know you certainly do. Kyle Miller coming up on the show.
Oh, good.
Yeah, what up, Kyle?
Yeah, Fluvanna guy, right?
Kyle's a rock star.
Yeah, we're similar age as Kyle.
Yeah.
The guys in the how would you characterize it? Flipping, development,
Yeah,
business.
that's
Just an
probably
entrepreneur.
He's also a fellow service member
Yeah,
in the
dude.
Army.
Yeah.
But
Kyle Miller, guys, should be a good show. Any closing thoughts there for the listenership and viewership, Scott?
As if you are an agent or buyer, or someone who's a potential seller who's going to need to be a buyer, what are you doing to communicate? What is your messaging to the people that you are buying, selling, working with, aiming to serve or be served by? Get involved in the process as early as possible, and create a good action plan with your team.
Amen. You know, when we talk about ABC, always be closing, it's really always be communicating.
Yeah,
Always
absolutely.
be communicating. Communicate with your trusted advisors, Scott Morris, and we're all in this together. We'll get through this together.
Yeah, I don't look at this as a difficult time, but a time that you just need to be more intent about everything that you do. Like there needs to be thought about action versus just jumping in and going, well, how are we going to make this work today?
Oh, well, I mean, I would also say let's to piggyback what Scott said, let's use some common sense, guys. And let's read some data and some statistics to get us through this, please, dear God.
Yeah.
Well, I've been doing this for 3.5 decades, and one thing I've learned, there's always cycles, and we're in a cycle right now, and it is always best in a real estate transaction to bring a trusted advisor. So thank you, Scott.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Bravo, gentlemen. Judah Wickower, thank you. Keith Smith, Yes Realty Partners, Scott Morris, Ross Mortgage. Look at the names and the companies on screen right now. Trusted advisors in the supply chain we call real estate. Interstate Service Company, a Home's Best Friend, ISC, Pearl Certification, Charlottesville Settlement Company, Segura Solar, Keller Williams, American Pest, and Ross Mortgage, guys. Judah, thank you. For Keith, Scott, my name is Jerry. We are back in 40 minutes on the I Love CVille show. Take care.
Good time.
Bravo. Bravo.
Awesome.
We're here.